Hey guys, welcome back to the Black Belt Husband Process. And today I want to talk to you guys a little bit about anger and why it's so important to understand anger in relationships, ultimately for the big purpose of creating lots of emotional safety in our relationships. So check this out. Okay guys, I just want to give you this visual explanation of something that I like to call the anger iceberg. Okay, so the anger iceberg, the concept is that what we see on the surface, all of our anger, is not necessarily representative of everything that is underneath the water. This is the water line right here. And it's like all the stuff that is below the surface on our iceberg. So for a lot of guys, they are aware of basically two emotions inside their system. They are aware of feeling really happy, and they're aware of feeling really angry. And so when we are angry in relationships, this is a problem because anger equates to a lack of emotional safety. And everything that we're trying to build in the Black Belt Husband Process is creating more emotional safety and more emotional connection in your relationship. So it's very similar to the relationship cycle. It's just a different visual depiction of how emotions work inside of our system. So if I show a lot of anger on the surface, if I'm demonstrating a lot of anger, the question for me is, what is underneath the surface? What is down here? And this is the journey for all of us to consider. So it's emotions like sadness, loneliness, hurt feelings. If I feel sad, if I feel lonely, if I feel hurt, if I feel afraid, I'm going to take all those emotions and I'm going to go up here and I'm just going to be really upset. I'm going to be really angry. I'm going to be really pissed off. And the problem when we do that in relationships is that if we show a lot of anger in relationships, remember this is a secondary response. And when we show a lot of anger in relationships, it creates emotional disconnection. It makes people feel unsafe. Because the very purpose of anger in our human functioning is what we call a self-protective emotion. The whole purpose is to push people away. It's to keep people away from us because we are saying, when we feel anger, we're saying, hey, I don't feel safe with you close to me, so I'm going to push you away. And when we push people away, it's the opposite of creating emotional connection in relationships. So if you're anything like me, you grew up in a family where you weren't taught these words, sadness, loneliness, hurt, afraid. You were just taught how to be really angry. So our job to grow in the Black Belt Husband experience and this process is to get better at identifying what is below the surface for all of us and what contributes to our anger. Because what we want to do is we want to start saying these words instead and talking about these words and just completely get away from doing anything having to do with anger in our relationship. So it's very similar to the primary emotions, secondary emotions concept in the relationship cycle. I just want you to think about it in this anger iceberg context too, because any visual depictions that we can use to draw upon to help us understand how emotions work in relationship and how emotions ultimately get us really stuck in relationships, and how we can see that all of our conflict in relationships is about emotion. So the big three that we talk about that kind of wreak havoc in relationships: money, sex, and kids. And it's because of money, sex, and kids that end up really hurting relationships. But in reality, it's not money, sex, and kids. It's the emotion that money, sex, and kids evoke in people, and people don't have a skill set knowing how to talk about that emotion. We just get mad and we shut down. And that's what ends up ruining relationships. Okay, so anger iceberg, think about anger being on the surface. We want to ask ourselves, what's below the surface and what's really at the roots of all that anger?